So here I am with my friend and colleague Margaret Parkin. Margaret, good to see you.
Hi, Rasheed.
And you've swooped into London for the day. Good to see you here. I think you're running a training course here tomorrow, but I'm keen to ask you a little bit about success stories, your business, and the success story of your actual books. Tell me a little bit about your background and the work that you do.
Okay, so as you said, I'm running a workshop here tomorrow, and that's what we call a storytelling masterclass. But Success Stories that's the name of my company, and what we specialise in is in business narrative and storytelling. So it's how we use story, metaphor, narrative to help the learning process, help people make changes. So I work in training, coaching, consultancy, using those particular methodologies.
And so tell me, I know that lots of people will know you from the Tales for Trainers book.
Yes.
Tell me, why is it that people have been drawn to stories and storytelling to help them in the business workplace, that they would seem like an unlikely combination?
Yes, I know what you mean. I think probably when the first Tales for Trainers came out, which was about 12 years ago, people thought it was quite weird and a bit wacky. But actually, now I'm finding it is more mainstream. So, people are beginning to realise that there are lots of benefits to using story. And actually, storytelling is nothing new. It's been on the go for thousands of years.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the reasons why people are going back to this type of old learning methodology, because it works.
And I'd imagine also that storytelling is very important. Most organisations are trying themselves to tell a story, isn't it? They are wanting people they're trying to sell products around that story. So actually, being able to harness storytelling, if they're able to do it, will probably help them in all aspects of their work. Is that what you find?
Very, very much so. And something we've started doing more recently is what we call story gathering.
Right.
So I'm finding now, particularly in the present economic climate, we're living in a climate of mistrust. We don't trust politicians, we don't trust bankers, etc. And so in terms of a business's profile and their branding, let's say, every business these days has a website. And on every website it says, our mission is this, our values are that, we are fabulous, da-da-da. But who believes them? So what I'm finding now is that a customer's stories, customer success stories, carry so much more credibility and what we call social proof. So what I'm doing with a lot of companies now is to help them to gather those stories and either put them onto video or write up the narrative. So it's more than a testimonial, it's more than just a one-liner. It's an actual story to say, Joe Bloggs went to this company, he had a problem in this, had a problem getting finance, and this company helped him. And that carries so much more weight. And
that must be quite powerful too. I guess that must give a lot of information, especially if people are working in certain professions, care, where you really do have a profound impact on people's lives. So has the success of that storytelling in that way surprised you then, Margaret? Because I know you've been working with companies for story for some time.
It has actually, and I think sometimes people surprise themselves. I was working with a heritage centre.
Yeah.
Nice background, and get to some wonderful places. And one of the tourist guides there was talking about how she'd taken a trip of school kids around this particular heritage centre, and she said there's always one little boy who's the naughty one, and she was pulling at her sleeve all the time, and etc. But at the end of the trip, this same little boy went up to her, Miss, what is it? And he said, Miss, this has been the best day of my life. Now, not only was that a wonderful story, but when she told that was part of a storytelling workshop I was running, her colleagues all looked at her and said, I've never heard you tell that story before. And she said, well, I've never thought to tell it. There's never been an opportunity to tell it. And you think, well, isn't that sad? Because as well as being a good selling and marketing tool, these are also wonderful knowledge-sharing tools. Right.
So is that the ultimate purpose of the storytelling work with organisations, that they have a deeper understanding of their work, their story, what they're about, and it's actually a tool to get them to work more collectively, more collaboratively, to team build and so on? Is that what it's ultimately about?
It's partly about that, yeah. I mean, I either use story in that way, as you say, to help people tell their own story and learn how to collaborate, or I can use story as a vehicle. So what I mean by as a learning vehicle, and what I mean by that, let's say if you're working on team effectiveness, for example, if I go in a traditional mode, working with a team, the premise is always like a punitive, wagging the finger and saying, no, you're not very good at this, are you? But if I use a story, let's say a story like The Enormous Turnip, which is what we call a cumulative tale, it's a story about a team that, an old man and a woman and a cat and a dog that pull a turnip up. If you use that as a vehicle to address the issues of team building, there's something about that. It's almost like, I think in child rearing they call it distraction techniques. It's almost distracting the team away from themselves and their own issues, and to focus on something else.
And I would imagine this is why some books have been incredibly popular. Your book's been very popular, and why presumably books like Who Moved My Cheese have been very popular, because it allows people to really look at some of those issues safely and then relate it to themselves, their business and their organisation.
Yeah.
Tell me, Margaret, I'm curious to know, and I'm sure some people watching this will be curious to know, your background. What got you involved in the training world and the writing world? As I understand it, you worked previously as a human resources manager, so probably you understand only too well the function and the dysfunction of organisation. How did you get involved in that world, and how did you move into training yourself?
Well, I suppose I moved into training because I was teacher trained originally, and then realised I wasn't very good with children, which was a bit of an eye-opener for all concerned. And then I went into generalist HR, as you say, and then moved back to training. So it's almost like a full circle move for me. And the storytelling evolved, really, because I think I've always been a storyteller. I've always found that I used lots of stories in my training sessions to get a point across. So if you talk about a complex topic, like motivation or something of that nature, to give the group an example to say, well, it's like this. Do you remember King Midas, or do you remember Pandora? And these are things that everybody can relate to.
Right.
Everybody remembers these stories.
And then success stories, your business, presumably, and it came out of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I'm very curious to know, I know that there's a new book that's just about to publish. Can you just tell us a sentence about that and what that book's called?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this one here, she said, holding up, this is actually a revised edition of the first book that came out, Tales for Trainers.
Right,
so that's on the market now.
Right, yeah.
And then in October of this year, the new More Tales for Trainers is coming out. And it's actually the subtitle is actually using stories to influence and to encourage change. So it's more about how we use story and metaphor to influence somebody else, because HR managers, trainers, coaches, we're all in the profession of persuasion. We're all in the market of persuasion.
So this is a tool for them as they're going in to help them change, by using story to help them to be able to help the organisations move very powerfully further forward. So I imagine the lovely thing about these books is whether somebody works in HR or whether somebody is a coach, they're things that they themselves can get hold of and use.
Very much so,
and make them feel more comfortable. More tools for the toolkit.
Absolutely. I mean, the new book follows the same format as the other, because this new book is the fourth one now, and it follows the same format. That the first part is more of the theoretical side of it, because if you are a trainer or a coach, you know yourself, Rasheed, you have to know what it is you're doing. You have to know the underpinning of the psychological knowledge of what it is you're doing. But then every book also has an anthology of 50 tales, 50 stories, and they're a mixture. Some of them are my own stories, personal anecdotes. Some are traditional stories. Some are like Aesop fables, for example. So there's a huge eclectic mix. And in all of them, particularly in this latest book, in all of them, I give some talking points, some trigger questions for a coach or a trainer or an HR manager can use as a learning activity. So it's all there for you.
Fantastic.
So you can just use the story, either read the story out or give a copy of the story, and then say, the story is there as a vehicle for reflective thinking and discussion. That's what it's all about.
And tell us, very briefly, because we've got just a couple of seconds left, I'm very curious, if you were to give advice either to an organisation or people training with organisation, what would that be, bearing in mind that they're all wanting to move forward? Just a couple of...
In terms of using story and metaphor, I think the key to me, because I think a lot of trainers like the idea of using story, but aren't quite sure what to do with it, or aren't quite sure how to use it. And I think my tip really would be, what is your purpose? What is the purpose of what you're doing? A lot of people will just use what I call the one story fits all policy, or a funny thing happened to me, which as soon as somebody says a funny thing, it's not going to be. And really it's just for self-gratification. If, as a business storyteller, you're doing something for the benefit of the audience or the benefit of the group, not you. So that would be certainly one tip. The other tip is to remember you are talking to adults, business storytelling is not the same as children's storytelling, and that's another thing I find so many trainers fall into, is of using this kindergarten type voice of hello boys and girls, and of course they will crucify you quite rightly if you do that. So you can still use story, but use it using your ordinary voice, and remember you're using it for a purpose, which might be to educate, to make a complex topic easier, to inspire, to inform. But it's always with that in mind.
Fantastic. Well, Margaret, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know you've got to head off. I know you've got to prepare for your talk and so on. Thanks so much, and good luck with the next book and with Success Stories.
Thank you, Rasheed. Lovely to see you.
And can you just tell us the website address again for the Success Stories?
The website is www.success-stories.co.uk.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.